Hi, ladies. This is Mrs. O'Connell. I'll just warn you in advance. I'm here with Flora. She is jumping in the background, so you may hear an occasional squawk from her. So, the following information is just to follow up on the research that you did last week with your small groups about Puritanism. Unfortunately, we won't get to see your poster presentations. Immediately. Hopefully, we'll be back together soon and we can see those because I know that you put a lot of work into them. So, here's some important information that you may want to consider including in your notes for this unit. Puritans is a general term for English Protestants who wanted to purify the Church of England. So, when you think of Puritans, really think of the root of the word pure. Because that ultimately is what they wanted to do. They wanted to purify their faith, purify their lives. They objected to the rituals, decorations, and organization of the Church of England. So it was, the Church of England was established as, or rather by the English monarchy. Church services, spaces of worship were very lavish and decorated. And the Puritans perhaps recognized that there was far too great an emphasis on the bejeweling of the church and not enough emphasis on faith and their relationship with God. So they wanted a simpler form of worship and organization. King Charles II of England demanded that anyone who did not support the new Church of England, the Anglican Church, be excommunicated, so be evicted from the church formally, which would have been a big deal at this time. So in order to escape this religious persecution, Puritans fled England and came to America. Some of their beliefs, they had this idea of total depravity, which is this belief that humankind is totally sinful and wicked by birth, by their just nature. As a result of Adam and Eve and their sins in the Garden of Eden, Puritans believed that they were damned for eternity. They also believed in this idea of predestination. So you are either elect, meaning you are saved, or you are unregenerate, meaning you are damned. They believed that salvation belonged to the elect, God's chosen people, and that if you were predestined as an unregenerate, that nothing you could do on earth would help you become saved. So regardless of the good works you did in the earthly world, you could not be saved if you were predestined or predetermined to be damned. Another Puritan ideal is grace. And the presence of grace was demonstrated by a person's outward behavior in a few ways. And I realize the bullets are a little funny looking here, but there's four that are kind of equal importance. So personal responsibility for one's behavior, one's appearance, one's what's the word I'm looking for? One's reputation in the community. Industriousness is the idea of hard work and labor and working for one's own success and well-being. So hard work. Temperance is abstaining from alcohol consumption. You may recall this from studying the temperance or prohibition movement in American history. So temperance is total abstaining from consumption of alcohol. And they truly believed in this simple life. So they believed in simplicity. They had, very few material items. That was something they really wanted in their personal lives, which were defined by their faith. And in their faith, they wanted simplicity as well. So that was something they were trying to escape from in the Church of England again. Yes, Flora. Okay. Puritan government. So the setting of our play, which is fictional, but is based in on a real time period in American history, is Salem, and that's in Massachusetts. So the government of Salem and of Massachusetts as a whole was a theocracy, with the legal system based on the Christian Bible. So church and state were one and the same. Their laws were governed by their faith, and in other words, moral laws and state laws are one and the same. So if you sin, that's everyone's business. A sin is also a crime in this type of government. An individual's private life must conform to moral laws, or the individual represents a threat to the public good. So some forbidden behaviors in this time period, in this place in America, were things like dancing, singing, gambling and games, reading for fun, failing to attend church every Sunday, caring about material items and worldly possessions. Punishment for committing these sins included things like whippings and hangings, were done in public so as to warn others against committing the sin. Okay. Scare tactics. And this is something we're going to see in an example of a sermon from this time period. But sermons, which the priest would deliver, or the pastors rather would deliver during their church services, focused on oftentimes very dark and frightening imagery, such as hell, fire, brimstone. And the idea was to frighten people into submissive behavior, frighten them so that they would act in a way that was holy and righteous, and not be a threat to the rest of the community, not be a bad example that could threaten their kind of strict way of life. Women in Puritan society, this will be really important to understand, as many of the main characters in The Crucible are women. And if you know anything about the Salem witch trials, you know that women primarily were targeted as suspected witches. So women were expected to submit to their husbands and to the church. Instead of Mrs., they were called goodwife or goody. So that's something you'll see in the play. So I would be, for example, Goody O'Connell. It was the belief, or it was their design, that the man of the house was the sole provider. Women who had lost their husbands would face homelessness, alcoholism, and they were especially prone to being accused of being witches. So a woman's value and a woman's worth was totally tied up in her marriage, and her husband was the representative of the family, was, the decision maker, was the leader, and wives were expected to be submissive, and if they were unmarried or if they were widowed, that was a problem. Young unmarried women with no living family had a difficult time, but could sometimes find work as a servant in another household. We'll see some examples of this in the play as well. Women's main responsibility was to bear children, and many of them would die due to lack of medical resources. Slavery existed in this time period, in this setting. Puritan theologian Cotton Mather preached directly to the slaves, calling them the miserable children of Adam and Noah, and told them that God had doomed them to become slaves. So again, this idea of predestination, one's fate has already been determined at birth. In the play The Crucible, we will see a slave character named Tituba and the treatment she receives.